I just got into real estate about like 24 or 5 and then kind of started my own shop like 27, 28. And yeah, people were like, aren't you too young for this? I'm like, look, I'm going this way and you can either join me or get out of the way because that's where I'm going.
Yo. Welcome, Bob. We're so excited to have you on with us today.
Thank you. No, it's great to be here. I really appreciate the invite.
Bob, welcome to the Find Your Freedom podcast, my man. You were an introduction referral from one of our favorite FYF guests, Melissa Dorman. If you haven't already, go check out her episode. I believe it's number 5. It is absolute fire for those who haven't already listened or watched.
So awesome.
She absolutely killed it. And after we finished recording with her, she said, hey, you got to connect with my man, Bob. He has a super interesting story. He's done so much in such a short period of time. She shared with us that you got out to Portland around 2016, 2017, built a hard money lending company, successful syndicator, commercial deals left and right, and also looking at a skyscraper deal. Did I have all that accurately?
Yeah. I mean, we're working on. We're trying to stay active, so we work on lots of different things.
Seems like you guys stay real active. So, what brought you to Portland originally, and what was the plan as you made that move out to the Portland market?
Yeah, so I was in the Bay Area, and I was working in commercial real estate at that time in brokerage, looking to get more on the principal side of the business. And there's a story behind how that. Why I was really keen on that.
Let me pause you real quick there. So for the non-real estate people, can you explain what the principal side is?
Sorry. Yeah. So I was on brokerage. We were effectively trying to help sellers sell their deals to other buyers. And we were doing large institutional sized office properties. So in San Francisco, high rises, a lot of stuff in Silicon Valley, leased to Google, large $100 million, $1 billion kind of deals. So that was the brokerage side, is kind of helping facilitate those transactions. And then on the principal side, that's when you're actually going and being the owner, the operator, the buyer of those projects.
Perfect. So then you're dealing with equity, then you're dealing with appreciation. And sounds like a much more financially savvy way to be on that side.
Well, I mean, less risk on the brokerage side.
Yeah.
Still a ton of upside, especially when you're dealing with those kind of dollar volumes. One transaction can be life-changing just from a commission standpoint.
Right.
But yeah, I had always been more interested in actually, owning the real estate. And so was looking to make that shift. And Kelly, my partner, life partner, we've been together since college. We have a kid together, everything else. She got a cool job opportunity up in Portland. And I had done some work under the brokerage deal in Portland. And so I had a few connections up there. And I said, hey, if I don't do the entrepreneurial thing now, and I just go and get another job, I'm likely going to, kind of not have the risk appetite in a few years. So it's kind of now or never. Let's lean in and get it done. And so we did it. And that's how I met Melissa. I moved up to Portland, knew no one, and just got 6 coffees a day. I was so caffeinated from all the different coffees.
Now you're talking my language.
It was ridiculous, but yeah. So I mean, I just tried to meet everyone as quickly as possible, and see who was doing what. That's how Melissa and I got connected. And I was looking for on Indeed, just trying to see if there were any like real estate things, what was out there. And there was a hard money lending company, Merchants Mortgage, who was looking to set up a Pacific Northwest branch. And I said, wait, you want to pay me to go and network with a bunch of real estate investors? And I'm already doing this. I should probably put those two together.
Very cool.
So that's how the hard money lending thing came. And then from there, just been working on buying a bunch of different commercial real estate assets and operating them.
That was another cool insight that I think is really important for the aspiring entrepreneurs to hear. Is you went up there and you're like, I better start networking. I better start meeting people. Can you talk a little bit more? Can you expand on like, all right, well, I'm here in a new city now. What should I do to meet people? Can you talk about what you did and what worked best?
Yeah. So I first just started trying to find like real estate investing events.
Like meetups and...
Yeah, meetups, anything like any. I was just trying to meet people who are in the industry. I went to some commercial real estate things through Urban Land Institute and different kind of commercial real estate stuff. I went to the residential investing groups. I was literally just like Give me your business card. Give me your business card. Following up with everyone. Let me take you out to coffee. I just want to pick your brain. I think the biggest thing was once you start getting those connections, like asking for 2 or 3 referrals just of who else should I meet from those people. And that quickly kind of like spiders it out.
So within a short period of time, you were getting connected with quite a few different people, sitting down with them, picking their brain, and and then on top of that, not being afraid to ask them for a couple of referrals to connect with and tap into their network as well. That takes
Yeah. And very at the end of it, right? It's just, hey, like, hey, this was a great meeting. Really appreciate it. Like, is there anyone else who you think I should connect with in town? You know,
right.
I'm still new, just trying to meet the scene. You know, and then for me, it was, and I've always been this way, but it's how do like you provide value, right? And so as you start to see what people need and what people have, you end up saying, oh, well, I just met with this other guy who like has what you need. Like, let me just connect you to. I don't need to make money off of it, whatever. Let me just, you know, start to connect you to. And pretty quickly you get a lot of inbound traffic to your phone, and you kind of become this choke point in the funnel where you get to see a lot of first looks at deals, helping people out. And you know, that kind of builds a good referral base.
So you may even go into it not knowing exactly what's going to come out of it, but as you start to talk with people and find out what they need, then you can provide that value that you're talking about. Now, fast forwarding for a moment now, in your own words, what does peak asset management do, and what sets you all apart in your market up there in Portland?
Yeah, so we're a value add commercial real estate operator and investment manager. So we syndicate and operate value add commercial deals, mostly in Portland. It's been on the West Coast to date. So we have had some assets in Washington, Oregon, and California. We just traded out of our mobile home park in California. So right now it's just Oregon and Washington. But we buy and okay, in the grand scheme of real estate operators, like we're tiny, but we've grown to the size now where we're not, you know, kind of insignificant. And we've got our sights on significant growth from here. So depending on how you value property, you know, cost or current market value and cap rates and all that, like our portfolio is somewhere between 30 and 50 million bucks. We got about 200-ish doors of multifamily, and then about 150,000 feet of commercial space.
Wow, that's awesome.
We're targeting about $1 billion. We're targeting $1 billion real estate owned portfolio in 3 years. So that's kind of the growth curve, targeting about 75 million in new acquisitions this year.
That sounds totally reasonable. I love it.
Yeah, I mean, I think the hardest part for us is like finding deals that are worthy.
With the value add, especially, it's like, yeah, let's find the deal that's really going to be low risk and make sense that we can, you know, get into this deal and add some more value to. And then, are you looking to mostly exit? Or are you looking to hold these, or is it a mix of both?
So I'm a CPA background,
Right.
And so I'm all about kind of tax efficiency, and I also am a very big believer in compounded interest and everything like that. So our philosophy is finding a market that, through our analysis, is going to grow at a rate that outpaces inflation, so that long term you're going to get, you know, above inflationary growth. We are trying to find distressed or value add assets in that market to be able to do a nice forced appreciation over about 2 years. And then the real play is to then recycle equity in that. So have a significant velocity of equity. So the hold is kind of our main thing. We want to buy, do the value add, refinance out, you know, kind of basically a commercial burr, and then hold it. And like that market, you know, from a supply constraint standpoint, you know, long-term demand growth standpoint, where you're going to have rents outpace inflation. And, you know, it's kind of like the standard family office model. It's like, why, if you put in all the work, would you sell the thing?
Right.
Like, just wait for appreciation to happen, refi the dough out, and then do it again.
That's awesome. Thanks so much for sharing that with us. I think that insight into what your algorithm is, I think is super critical for as people get a little more deep into the real estate fortune. So you gave us a little sneak peek there.
Just to confirm though, like, so we have sold, right? And so we've sold certain properties, but we're then 1031ing. And so if like, you know, and people are like, oh, I really like burrs. To me, a burr and a 1031 effectively do the same thing. because you can burr out your equity and go and buy a similar sized property again. And then you have two smaller properties, or you can sell 1031 and you just have like one larger property or two, smaller different properties. So at the end of the day, like as long as you're tax efficient, I think you're fine.
I think we need to quickly just define BRRRR for those in the audience that are not familiar with that.
Explain like I'm 5.
Buy, renovate, rent, refinance, repeat. Buy value add property, do some sort of value add to it to increase that value. Hopefully by doing that, you're able to then get a new loan that in the best case would actually give you more money out than the equity you put into it. And then you go and do it again with that same money.
We're getting entrepreneurship 101. We're getting real estate 101. We're getting finance 101. This is a comprehensive podcast we got going in here. I love it. So you gave us a little sneak peek into your background. I'd love to expand on that a little bit. So you were a CPA for PricewaterhouseCoopers, which is one of the big four. You were a real estate broker for CBRE, which is one of the largest out there. So how, and then you did mortgage, basically networking for a big bank that was setting up a whole new regional office. Can you kind of talk about at what point you realized through that process? Well, actually, I want to start with, we had talked about this a little bit before we started recording, how you ended up getting into finance. And then at what point you realized that wasn't the path you wanted to go on to. I think that was really interesting how you talked about that.
Yeah. So really early on, and I'm talking 8 years old, 10 years old, I started seeing people who I really, respected, and I liked their lifestyle, and they just seemed to have a lot of like ownership over their time. And I started to see a commonality where they all owned a bunch of real estate. And I didn't really understand how they got that or what that, but I just kind of started pairing that together. And that was in stark contrast to my parents, who I love and they're great. But their standard, they followed that standard corporate ladder, climbing strategy. And so, we owned a house that we lived in, but they were driving an hour into work every day in Chicago, just grinding, coming back, getting the W-2 job. But all the people who I saw who really, had a little more ownership of their own time and everything else, there was just ownership of real estate was kind of a common thread. And so that really piqued my interest initially. And I did some real estate internships in high school and some stuff in college. When I went to go pick my major, I told my dad, I'm going to do a real estate major. I've always been interested in this, really want to do it. And he looked at me like I was crazy. He said, hey.
Because he's in that world. He's in the corporate world. And he's like, real estate.
He's in the corporate world,
come on,
right?
buddy.
Yeah. Well, he's like, you can always go and do real estate. But like, why don't you, kind of get a base in business that you can like leverage in any way you want? I had been doing well in my like pre-business accounting classes and everything else. He was a former CPA, and he kind of steered me in the direction of going and going and getting an accounting degree and going that route. And honestly, it was a great. I don't think I would change it if I went back.
Yeah, it turned out to be really great advice. It sounds like.
Yeah, no, it was, and for a while, when I was working in accounting, I hated it.
You're like, what did my dad do to me?
Yeah, I was like, this sucks. But what I found about real estate that's really interesting is you can come at it from so many angles,
right?
And people who have like really significant backgrounds that are not real estate, but like tangential in some way, like an attorney, or obviously construction, or finance. In some way they've got this other life skill that they've really learned and they've become an expert in, and then they come and use that on real estate. I think that's really where you see like the power and the benefit. And so I've seen multiple people kind of do that, coming from different areas, being that expert, and that ended up being how I've used my accounting background. So studied accounting, got a couple degrees in it, worked for PwC, auditing large public companies, a lot of tech, biotech, did that in San Diego and then up in the Bay Area for a little bit. And I was working so hard, and I enjoy hard work, and I have that. We can get into like hiring people and what you look for and everything else, but like I definitely have that kind of intrinsic motivation, that fire, that little gear that never stops. Like, so I'm a workaholic by nature.
Yeah, just grinding naturally.
Yeah, but I wasn't enjoying what I was doing, and when you're working 14, I think there was one time when I worked. And some people say they work 120-hour weeks, But like, if you actually calc what that looks like, and I did it for 2 weeks straight, that means that you're sleeping like 4 hours a day and working 7 days a week.
It's so
Like
wild.
it's something crazy like that. And so I was sleeping at the office, like it was nuts. And so I realized that like, this is not what I want to be doing.
Unless they're paying you like $5 million
This is not recommended.
I've never had someone scoff at me when I talked about my like 12-hour days to 14-hour days back in the thing. And I said that to Bob and he's like, 12-hour days. You're such a wimp.
Get out of here with that 12-hour days.
I love it.
You know, I still work hours like that now, but I think it's, you know, when you find something you're passionate about, it stops feeling like work, you know? And I think that's like the biggest takeaway that I knew it was out there. And I knew like, I just had this gnawing on my inside, like you need to be doing something different, something that you want to be doing. And because like I still have that gear and the motor going, but now I don't know if the gears got greased or it in some way it's like, hey, it just doesn't feel like work anymore.
Right.
It just feels like it's fun. I love what I'm doing every day. So I made that change in 2014, and I didn't know like I had done real estate internships. I had done a couple of classes in my master's program in real estate, but I had no idea like what real estate really looked like.
Yeah. Can you talk us through that transition right there? I think that's such a critical thing because, half or more than half of our audience is in the corporate life and they're like, man, I really want to go out on my own. Can you kind of talk us through what you were thinking and how you really made it happen with transitioning to Peak?
Yeah. So it was CBRE was that transition. So because I didn't know what I was doing, right? But I knew that I didn't want to be in the accounting world. So I was talking to PwC at the time. Hey, how do I'd started working on a lot of M&A mergers and acquisitions transactions at PwC, looking at company valuations and everything else. And I really enjoyed valuing companies and kind of understanding how that whole, cash flow analysis and everything worked. I thought that was really cool. And so I said, hey, is there a way that I can do real estate here? And they were trying to make it work. But at the same time, I found a job opportunity working with an institutional investment sales platform at CBRE. So, there's 5 brokers on a team, a bunch of analysts, and you're basically going and selling, you're helping sell multi-million-dollar, 100 million larger real estate deals. So I said, hey, look.
Yeah, they're huge. They do the biggest deals there.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, yeah, they're one of the biggest shops, and there's certain brokers who do smaller deals, but we were I was on the institutional team. So we were doing, stuff where Blackstone and
right.
All these REITs and everything like that. Those are the guys who they're transacting through.
So you're literally seeing behind the curtain at some of the most successful, largest investment firms out there, like BlackRock. It's just
exactly.
Yeah. Talk about learning from the best players. That's huge.
Yeah. And so that was, fundamental and foundational to what I'm doing today. So a lot of people, because the only piece of 1 to 4 unit property I own is my house in Portland. Everything else is commercial. And so people always ask me, hey, how did you get it? How do you transition from residential to commercial real estate? And I'm like, I don't know. I was asking when I started with the hard money lending, how do you transition from commercial to residential? I don't know how the hell to do this. But that's because, I learned at the commercial level. So when I think of a capital stack or how you buy a deal, I'm not thinking here's a down payment. I'm going to go to the bank and get a, 75% loan and call it good. It's all right, how do I structure, a JV agreement? Can we get any mezzanine financing? Really kind of being intricate with the capital stack to, kind of lever the GP returns as much as possible. Right. And that was just how I was trained at CBRE.
Sounds like a blessing that you're able to come in at the commercial level, and it gives you kind of a way into larger deals, larger size deals, larger opportunities, probably more upside, and you're learning the intricacies that come with the commercial side of the business as opposed to residential. My background's more residential, so I admire all the knowledge that you bring to the table with your commercial background. So going to that moment where you said, okay, we want to do this for ourselves, and we want to be in business for ourselves. Talk about the origin story of Peak and how you guys got that started up, and what the thought process was when you were getting started.
Yeah. So when I was at CBRE, and I mean, for a while you're just drinking from a fire hose and really trying to learn, and you don't understand. Like I had the numbers background, and I was running a ton of numbers on all these deals, and I mean, you're working on multi-tenant office buildings, 100 plus tenants, and you're the analyst at that point, so you're reading all the leases, and you have to model all this stuff and really understand how it works. But it takes a while to really like start to get it. But once you do, you start to really see like how the buyers are looking at it and how they're really making their money. You start to make friends with the operators and really pull back the curtain on how they capitalize their deals. And so our team found a pair of office towers in Silicon Valley, in San Jose. It was like a broken deal. They were like 60% leased and going down. The capital stack was totally busted on the current owner, and these guys just needed to sell. But the deal was going to be pretty good, especially if it was priced right. And so we came in and we found that deal, kind of like underwrote how the value add was going to work in terms of this is the capital you're going to do, here's the leasing or whatever. And then we went and found the buyer, and they went and ended up buying it. And they followed our business plan like to a T. And in 18 months, they had dumped in, I think they bought it for like 40. They bought these two towers for like 40 or 50 million bucks. They dumped in another like 15 in capital in terms of improvements, leasing commissions, everything else, leased stuff out to WeWork, got up to 95% occupancy in 18 months. And they were in it for like 60 million bucks, and they sold it for like 140 million. To an operator. And all they did was follow our business plan.
Right.
And so what we did is we got a brokerage commission on the buy side and a brokerage commission on the sell side. And like the guy who, because the operator then got an institutional capital partner to fund most of the capital. I mean, he made like $30 million to his name, not to his company, like to his name in 18 months. I was like, wow, I'm on the wrong side of this business.
So that was your wake up call?
Yeah, that was kind of the eye-opening event when I saw it come full circle, and they literally just did our business plan.
Right.
I was like, man, like we know how to do this, and we can find the deals too. Like why is not every, and I still question this, like why is not every real estate broker like buying their deals? Like if you have conviction that what you're selling is a good deal, like go and raise the effing money and buy it and operate it. Like you're going to make way more money than your commission.
It's that risk. It's just so hard for some people to take that.
But at that level, you're buying deals with non-recourse debt. Anyway, don't do it because I'll do it. And
leave more deals for Bob and Peak if you don't have the fortitude. But so you saw that happen. You saw that all come together. They followed your business model, your business plan, and you said, "Hey, why don't I follow my own business plan and business model?" And is that where the idea for Peak was born?
Yeah, pretty much. And I had always since I was 8, right? It was like, hey, there's this real estate ownership thing. And then it kind of started to crystallize or come into focus, right? In terms of how you build a capital stack, everything else. And then, oh, wow, here are business plans and they work, right? And they work because I've seen the buy, I've seen the sell. We formulated how this works. And so it all started to come together there. I still at that point didn't really know how to buy real estate though. Like I could sell real estate all day, but I had never raised money. There was a big piece missing for me on the like mezzanine financing, seller financing aspect, that once I kind of put that tool in the tool belt, everything just started to like unlock, because I had this commercial training, but then I also got an understanding of how to kind of structure in some equity, some like quasi debt, quasi equity stuff that banks see as equity, but is effectively debt to everyone else. And that really kind of unlocked the world of acquisitions for me.
It seemed to be like kind of a pretty clear decision for you there, Bob, where you're like, after watching that deal come together and close, you got it on the front end, you got it on the back end, but you're like, why am I not the principal on this deal? So it seemed like a pretty clear decision. Now you're all excited. Now you start up the business. And did you end up finding out that it wasn't quite as easy as you kind of hoped or thought it might be when you first started it?
So I kind of got into it a little slowly. And again, this was where I was up in Portland, kind of doing the networking thing,
right?
Just trying to figure out where I could add value. And so, I was able to find some general partners, real estate developers to partner with. And so, like my first deal I syndicated with a couple buddies, there was a general partner who was effectively had a shovel ready construction project for a 100-unit apartment complex. He needed like $2.5 million of equity to be raised in order to do it. He had too much on his plate to go and raise money. So he would rather have had a co-GP come in to go raise that money. I said, all right, well, I'll give it a shot. And so we ended up putting a syndication together on that. So that was kind of the first syndication deal I did. And it was great because it was pretty de-risked, right? I mean, you're already through entitlements. You just need, there was a co-guarantor of the general contractor, on the loan. So it was very de-risked. It was like, hey, put $2.5 million, wait 2 years, and you're going to exit and get these returns. So it was an easy one to start with. And then from there, I did a couple little house flips, but it pretty quickly went into, let's buy some mid-sized apartment buildings that we have a little value add on, start bringing in and, other people's like investor capital, and kind of going from there. The other thing I want to mention is I've never owned a piece of real estate 100% myself, ever. Not my house. I own it with Kelly. Never. Like I would much rather be that general partner and be using other people's money to lever my returns. And that is different from a lot of other people I've talked to.
So I just want to make sure that we encapsulate this and give a real quick summary so that everyone can fully enjoy what we just heard from Bob here. So he graduates, goes into a big four firm. He grinds it out, learning as much as he can in accounting, switches over, starts getting a big experience in real estate from one of the top real estate firms, CBRE, starts realizing, you know what, I can really do this on my own. I can be the principal on this side of things. Then he starts, instead of jumping right in and taking risks, doing some big things, he says, you know what, I'm going to find some other people who have experience and jump in on some deals that really make more sense on the lower end of risk and partner with people that I can still keep learning from. And I'll use that as a platform to start building on. I think that's such a admirable way. And from our experience doing this podcast, seems like the most sound way of really ensuring that when you do step on your own to be an entrepreneur, to give you the greatest chance of success. You learned a bunch of finance. You learned a bunch about real estate from some of the top people. Once you felt you had that acumen, then you partnered with some other people when you do it on your own and use them to kind of help make sure that you still have a support with doing things. I think that is so incredible. And now you're at, $30 to $50 million AUM, assets under management, it sounds like. And it's just like, it's such an awesome story to hear someone work so hard, gain the knowledge, take that risk to go out on their own, but doing it in a really smart way that still minimizes risks and triages it a little bit. And now really sort of spreading their wings now that they've gotten a lot of experience under their belt. So, I mean, we're only partway through the podcast here, but this to me is like, you want to hear the algorithm to go out and be successful, like follow Bob's footsteps, not in exactly those exact specific niches specifically, but whatever you have the dream of doing, go learn, go grind for a few years, get to be an expert in your field, then go find some more experience. And like Bob said, especially in like real estate and like for me, like all business is business. Like I was in hospitality, so I had some marketing and operations experience. And then I went and used it in dietary supplements and a tech startup. It's like, there's synergy between all these things. Go work hard and become really good at something. And then when you become an expert, then you can use those skills and people will want to partner with you. The networking people will be like, yeah, I want to be on your team. Let's go do this together. I love it so much. I don't know if you can tell I'm super excited, but I love this whole concept.
I think a big thing that you just said there is so like kind of two parts, right? One is you got to be passionate, right? You got to be, if you're just like going for the money and you want instant money, like that's not going to work. Like you need to put in that time and like defer a lot of gains in order to kind of build that base. And then, yeah, like what you were saying about, really going and build kind of what we talked about earlier, where you can build a skill set and expertise that's like tangential to real estate.
Yeah.
And so if you start with I think this is really big, where you start with the end in mind, right? And I got this advice when I was looking at, in college, like, hey, what do you want to do? It was like, what do you want your resume to say, like, when you retire?
Mm.
Right. And then really start like working backwards. Like, how do I get there? And I mean, you can do that when you're building a business or anything else. But if you begin with this like kind of 10-year BHAG, big, hairy, audacious goal,
Mm-hmm.
right? And you say this, plant that flag, and then say, all right, this is like unattainable today. Like, I can't get there today, but that's where I'm going. And then, all right, what do I need to do? Like, work backwards from there. And so that has been huge for me. And then if you don't have the skills, right, you either get the skills or you partner with someone who has those. And there's benefits and costs to both.
Yeah. What do you want on your tombstone? Right. So I like the principle of de-risk that you're talking about, Bob. And I think you kind of also, you touched on partnering as part of that de-risking. How do you view partnerships? When you were setting up those initial partnerships, what were you looking for? What were you thinking about? What advice can you give for people that are considering partnerships and trying to analyze whether a partnership is going to be a good fit?
I think it all comes back to aligning incentives and defining roles. And so, if you have two people who are, and this is the same thing like when you're hiring someone, like if you have, like for the longest, like I get along with people who are like me, right? Like I get along with people who are super entrepreneurial and like but you don't always want to hire someone who's super entrepreneurial and go getter, because they're going to like leave and start their own thing after like 3 months. So but so you want to understand your skill set and the role you want to be playing, and then you need to see what else you don't have. And a lot of times, honestly, at first it was trial and error. Like I didn't know how best to structure things. I've gotten burnt a few times. Like I've had like I had to stroke some checks that were pretty sizable to kind of end some partnerships. But you learn from those experiences. But I think the biggest thing is really having those defined roles, and then making sure that the compensation and everything else is aligned, so that like if things are going wrong, like one partner is not going one way and the other's going the other. Like you're figuring it out together. I think that's been huge. And then on the real estate partnership side, on the capital side, like having different, like have wealthier partners than you, and have a few of them, right? So like on one, like, so you don't have concentration with like all your portfolio and like one set of capital. Because things go wrong and you need to have capital calls and everything else. And it's like, if, so a lot of my initial investors were people who have a lot of wealth, but don't have time to invest it. So they know that they want to be in real estate and they want to be investing it, but they don't have time to do it. And so like investment bankers, doctors, things like that, where they're like, oh man, this makes so much sense, but like, I don't have the time. I need to go make my $1 million bonus.
And they need to have someone they trust to give the money to.
And there's getting a few of those. If you have the same group on every deal and things go sideways on like 3 of them, it's a recipe for trouble.
Wow. Thank you so much for that, Bob. It's nice to also have you share that you did get burned a few times, because it was starting to seem like, man, this guy has the Midas touch and nothing ever goes wrong for Bob. So even Bob, who's put together this formula for success, has been burned along the way a few times and had to learn from some of those early mistakes. Now,
but I think you can't give up on the partnership model.
Exactly.
Like you can't give up on it, because like you're like, I'm not an expert in construction. I think that's where I got burnt the most, is I would bring on these contractors and I'm like, I don't even know the questions to ask. So go and execute. And then, they would have their issues or go whatever. And you're mid construction on a project and you have to bring in someone new. And so I that was where my biggest issues were. But we've since been able to vet people, but yeah, it's like, just, there's going to be issues, and know that, I mean, even if you get an attorney involved on the front end and have all your legal docs drafted, like you're never going to know. You got to learn stuff by experience. And the best way to, the best experiential learning is like when you just get bit, your knees get skinned, like you break an arm. Like that's when you're like, oh, I don't want to ride my bike down that hill again.
That's what we're trying to help people avoid having to break those arms, by sharing the stories from us all breaking our arms along the way. So you can't acquire or possess all of the skills that you need. So you got to bring those people in that have what you lack. Now, for those interested in pursuing entrepreneurship through real estate, you've touched on it multiple times in this conversation. There's a lot of different ways to come at it, a lot of different angles in the business of real estate. What have you seen that worked really well? Maybe besides just what you've done, like what would you recommend to someone who says, I want to be in real estate and I'm not sure what that first step looks like, or which path should I go down?
I think we said it or talked about it a little bit earlier, where you got to kind of begin with the end in mind, knowing that end can change. But what do you want? Because real estate, there's a ton of different
Right.
paths in real estate. And so, I mean, do you see yourself owning a multinational public investment company with like hundreds or thousands of employees and like $500 billion assets under management, and it'd be a Blackstone, which was kind of what we're targeting? Or do you see yourself owning 20 doors of multifamily? Do you really enjoy the process of fixing up a house and you just want to be a flipper? Or I mean, do you want to just be kind of an agent and kind of be doing that? So once you figure out like what you actually want to be doing, and then you can work back from there and say, what skills do I need to get there? But I think that a low hanging piece of fruit is getting a real estate broker license. I have my broker license. I'm also a licensed mortgage loan officer. My CPA license is inactive, but I still am an active CPA. But that real estate brokerage license is like not that hard to get, and it opens up a ton of different possibilities for you. You can start working in the industry as a broker and making money, really starting to, if you don't have any background, you can go and join a team. For me, like I have my broker's license to go and buy real estate. I enjoy acquisitions. I'm able to use my brokerage commission as part of my equity. And we can talk about the math behind there, but it is killer. But I don't sell real estate. Like I would rather pay a commission to someone who's better than me at selling it.
Right.
So I just use it on the front end to really juice my returns. Because if you think about like at a very basic level, a 2.5% real estate commission,
right,
and you have a 25% down payment, that's 2.5% real estate commission is 10% of your equity requirement.
Right.
And 10% of your equity requirement is typically a GP contribution. And so you can literally just by buying a deal, fund your GP. And then you are able to take your 10% GP contribution and turn it into, promoted, call it 30 to 50% ownership.
Yep.
So like I own a 30 unit apartment complex bought a couple of years ago with maybe $5,000 out of my own pocket, right? The rest came from a brokerage commission.
Wow.
I own it with one other general partner, and we funded 10% of the GP and we own 55% of the asset.
Right.
And literally $5,000 out of my own pocket.
Yeah, that's crazy. Yeah, and what's important about that, I think, also is that while you're working to get the broker's license or whatever, specific to your industry certification that you want, you're gaining more knowledge. And while you're going through that process, you're networking with people who are you going to be able to align yourself with moving forward. So I think that's a really good recommendation for the aspiring entrepreneurs. Like, go work towards some certification, some benefit that will make sense for what the end goal is, like Bob was just saying. And while you're going through that process, be sure you're intentionally maximizing the process as part of the benefit of the end goal. You're networking with people, finding deals.
I worked in corporate America, but I just started to shift towards what my end goal was in terms of getting that work experience. And so, yeah, people who don't have any experience in their longer term goal and just want to quit their job and go and do it, like that's probably a recipe for failure. At least it's going to be like a ton of skin knees trying to learn.
Right.
It's like if if you're, it doesn't even matter. I was going to say if you're 50 or 60, like it sucks because you don't have the time to learn, and then the time to benefit from that is shorter. But no, like if you're not doing what you love, right, like you need to pivot and find something that you're passionate about. Because like I think I was listening to one of your other podcasts last night. It was Joe Ferris. Time is your most valuable resource, and if you're wasting it doing something you hate, like you're never getting that back. It's like that, he said it's like that gas tank that you can never refill, and you never know when it's going to go empty.
It's so hard. Yeah.
And it's just like, man, like you like stop doing what you hate and figure it out. And even if it means an interim step in the right direction, like that's better than going 180 degrees in the wrong way.
Absolutely.
100%.
Yeah. And maybe you just need to get that death clock up like Joe had behind him at the end of the podcast. Just a little reminder for the countdown. But yeah, it's such valuable advice. And the fact that, you do have that 9 to 5 job or whatever, and being, if you really dislike it, then you do have after 5 o'clock, to 9 a.m. the next day to start getting you on the path to potentially make that turn. So those are the hours that are critical to utilize. If you're worried about the risk, or if you're worried how you're going to connect those two dots to get that change, you got to figure out what you're going to do in those other hours to get you on the path that you want to be.
Yeah, I mean, if you can't get a job because you don't have the right schooling, like, yeah, there are night school programs. Like, if you are passionate enough about doing something, like, you will accomplish it. Like, there's this, I have a 3-year-old son, and there's this great like kids book I read to him, and it's about this lady who, she was like the first African American astronaut, and like the mantra in there is like, if you can dream it, if you can believe it, and work hard enough for it, anything is possible. And I am such a believer in that. It's first really crystallizing it in your mind, right? And believing it to like that extent that you think it's already real, and then just going and fucking grinding until it happens.
Right.
And so, I mean, I read that book to my kid all the time, and he, in the car, he's like, if you can dream it, believe it, and work hard for it. And
it's so funny because now, so I don't know if people really understood kind of what I said earlier, but you said that you had the dream of being, a multi-billion-dollar company. And I said, sounds realistic. And I really meant it, because now currently you're at, 30 to 50 billion or whatever it was. But already on the podcast, we've had a friend who I met 8 years ago who started his own similar company to yours, doing value add multifamily. And now he has over 3 billion under management in the 8 years since I've known him. And I was one of the first people in the syndication deals for his first deal. So I've seen the whole thing happen. And then we've had another person on this podcast who started his own firm doing student housing. And now he, in the 10 years since he started that, has over $1 billion of student housing under management. These things sound like it's ridiculous to be like, for someone to say. Some people think, oh, that's ridiculous to say my goal is to, be running $1 billion company. But it's like, no, these are realistic things that people are doing every day.
My goal is to be competitive with Blackstone. So $1 billion is like really small, because right now they have like,
right,
I don't know, 600, 700 billion under management, like 300. I need to look up the stats, but they're like so far in excess that if I don't hit my $1 billion assets goal in 3 years, like, I'm not going to hit the competitive with Blackstone in 10 years. And so it's like, yeah, so I mean, 3-5 billion, like that is, and luckily with my work experience, right? Like, I worked with those guys at that higher level. So to me, it's not like this impossible thing. It's just a couple extra zeros.
Yeah.
And it's how do you capitalize to get there? And so for us, it's like we're kind of grinding through the syndication game to scale out to be like institutional equity,
absolutely
investable. And so we've already started talking to some small family offices and everything else. But yeah, it's just like you gotta do what it takes to grow to a scale where you can start getting money from big pension funds and everything else. And then it's much easier to, take down $500 million office towers or whatever it is.
Right. So everyone out there, if you want to run $1 billion company, listen to the Find Your Freedom podcast every week. We have multiple guests on. They're going to give you the exact roadmap to get your company to $1 billion. So just listen every week. All right, everyone.
But if you don't want that, don't do it. Right. Because it's frigging work.
Yeah.
And some people just want to have some rental houses and go and retire. Right.
Right.
Like I have a very different mindset and different desire for what the company is going to look like. But like, you can totally just go and own a couple of apartment complexes and have the cash flow support your lifestyle and, do the whole thing. And that's a totally reasonable and like very good goal. I mean, if you have a goal, right, just go and do it. Right. But don't think that like someone else's goal should be yours. Like, make sure that it's like what you want out of it.
Yeah. Yeah. And I really love that point. Because, I'm kind of on the other edge of the spectrum. My goal was I want to make as much money in my 20s to set myself in my 30s so I can just be home with my children. Like, my goal was just to be able to have that time. Like, I want to have enough passive income to stay home with them. And then once they're in school, then I'm going to, get back to grinding, get back out there with whatever else it was. So, entrepreneurs have this full scale of things. But how are you going to get to that goal if you don't plan it, write it down, and then design your path to that goal? And I think that's a critical thing you keep going back to is like, yeah, where's my end game? How am I going to get there? Let me make sure that I'm being really thoughtful about that. I think that's super, super critical. What do you think you attribute your success most to? Is there certain traits that you think that you have or that are learned that have gotten you on this, fast track?
I'd argue the success piece, right? I mean, like, I think that the jury's still out because of like our target versus where we're at. Um, but I think a big thing is just kind of having that passion for what you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
I think that once you have that passion and you have the vision, um, I think we talked about it before we got on here. It's like, you get on the bus or get out of the way.
Yes.
Because it's like, you're like, we're going here, like with or without you, with or without naysayers. Yeah. And so I think that, for like just that drive, that knowledge of what I want, and then building the skill set to be able to start to achieve it, and then just saying, hey, like, I'm going this way. And like, if you because you're always going to have naysayers, always, and they're going to say, oh, that's too big, oh, that's the wrong thing, whatever else. And I mean, hear it, right? Because like, there might be some kernels of truth in there.
Right.
But like, if it's like antithetical to what you believe,
Absolutely.
fuck them. They go the path that you want to be going on. And that's kind of what I've got, and what I'm okay with. And I think that's what's really kind of taken me to this point, whether or not that's success. And I think the jury's still out. I think, in 10 years, let's get back on. And if I'm, Steven Schwartzman over at Blackstone, like, that's success.
You've already had a lot of success, my man. So
yeah, sorry, Doug, it's a grayscale. I love that you pointed out that you haven't reached your level of success, but it really is kind of this, this grayscale, and you're, at a good spot, but you're not settling for just being at the spot you're at. Your goals are here. So I love that you're still extending it on, and you have this long goal, but I think it's okay to sit in the moment and say, like, look, from where I came from and where I want to be, I'm in a good spot. Like, I'm on the path of success, so I want to continue on this path. And if you're looking at yourself,
I think we're on the path.
Yeah,
we're on the path.
I love that.
Yeah, it's super impressive, man. So we like to ask this question to kind of help zero in on one move that you made along the way that you felt gave you the highest ROI. Is there a single decision or move, other than just like the decision to go out on your own? Was there something specific that you did and look back on and go, man, once I did that, I really accelerated my my trajectory?
So like I said, and it's going to be different for everyone, right? Because everyone has different kind of skill sets that they're coming with, or where they're at on their journey. But for me, I earlier had said that I kind of had that larger institutional capital stack understanding, right? I knew what a deal looked like and smelled like, but I didn't really know how to buy it. And a big thing for me that kind of came into focus, especially because what I've done is I learned at this institutional scale of commercial real estate, but then I kind of, when I went on my own, I scaled it down to more middle market stuff. I mean, we're buying a lot of $2 to $5 million deals. And at that level, you're not dealing with institutional sellers often, or all the time. A lot of times you're dealing with like individual owners, people with different incentives than, being driven by IRR promotes and everything else. They're much more kind of like tax focused and everything else. So when I really started to understand like the power of second position seller financing, subordinate seller carries, and how you can, make it work really well for the seller, and be an advantage to them, but then also kind of building that into your capital stack. So all of a sudden, you've got that plus a syndicated equity, and like that just like juices your returns. For me, that was instrumental. And like there's this kind of guru coach dude, Greg Pinio. I went to his class on seller financing, and for me, it was instrumental. He's kind of a polarizing figure. Some people like him, some people don't. I think that, like, regardless of what you think about him personally, like what he teaches is phenomenal. So if you can figure out some way to learn that kind of seller financing angle, I think that's huge, and it opens up a ton of doors in terms of how to really get deals done.
Awesome. Yeah. And I think it's important. I like that you said that. Just because it's a polarizing figure doesn't mean everything they're saying is not really wise. There's certain things you can pick out. It's like, oh, like I really like that he said that. I can disregard like all these things, but this is like super valuable for me. I think one of the questions that we like to,
and to confirm, I like the guy, right? But there definitely people have like strong opinions both ways.
Yeah.
But nonetheless, like what he teaches is frigging gold. And if you can figure out however you can figure out how to learn that kind of skill set, is valuable.
Yeah. And I think those are great resources for our aspiring entrepreneurs to hear those names, go seek out that information, because they can really, really, like it sounds like it did for you, just be completely game changing on setting up your whole new vision for how you want to build your company. One of the questions that we ask all of our guests is, how would you personally define entrepreneurship?
Actualizing arbitrage. In some way, it's like, seeing, and this is what I love about real estate, but it's really, kind of seeing untapped potential.
Yes.
And then like uncovering it or kind of actualizing it. And I mean, it's a terrible, like, I don't know a good way to describe it, but building a company, man, it feels like you're trying to build a solid object by like swinging at air and hoping that the molecules just come together and form and it doesn't, and oh man, it takes forever and it's so hard. But like, if you have this like vision and you can really see it, like you'll keep swinging at the air until it just kind of comes together and like forms this like solid object. So I really think it's like seeing that like arbitrage opportunity. And I'm such a deal junkie. Like, I love, and so I've got Peak. I just started a new like virtual assistant company with some other buddies because we started using VAs in our company, and I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. And then my other buddy was like, yeah, they're great, and I do X, Y, and Z. So we were like, let's do this. So I'm just always like, whenever we see an opportunity or something like that, it's, hey, how do we kind of turn this into a business or capitalize on it? And so yeah, for me, it's seeing the arbitrage and then like figuring out how to really like make it happen. That's kind of what entrepreneurship is.
Yeah, that's such a cool way of saying it. This episode, I think, was super inspiring, and I love what I'm taking most from it. What resonated most with me was just really this formula that you followed to reach your end goal. Becoming an expert, I think, is so critical, because a lot of aspiring entrepreneurs are like, yeah, I want to be a millionaire and I want to run my own company, and they forget that you have to be an expert and you have to be really good at something to be successful at it, typically. So I think that really important piece is so critical. And I love your super high aspirations. So thanks so much for sharing your story with us, Bob.
I think also though, like a big thing that I started out trying to be an expert, right? And I'm still an expert in certain areas, but like, and you hear this a lot, is as the owner of a company or the head or CEO or whatever, I'm the chief investment officer. We don't have a CEO. We've got an operating officer, Kelly, and myself, the investments. But it's so true where you want to be the dumbest person in the room with the people you hire, right? Like you want other people to be those experts, and you kind of want to end up being that quarterback. And so like having a vertical of knowledge that you're really good at helps, especially initially. But then also being able to like kind of sniff out bullshit or have like a broad enough knowledge base where you can just understand what all the experts are telling you to then like make the right decision, like ends up like after you've started that company ends up being how you kind of scale from there.
That's so smart. Yeah. You have your specific specialty that you kind of built your background in, and then you're finding people like, who's the best at this that I can get on my team, and they're much smarter than me. No, I completely subscribe to that, because everyone in my life is actually brilliant. And I always feel like the odd man out. So I totally agree with that. Thanks so much, Bob. Where should we send people? They're going to want to be able to find out more about Peak and about you. Where should we send them?
Yeah. So email would be info@peakassetmgt.com, like management, and www.peakassetmgt.com is a good website. So either of those are a great place. We always have new investment deals coming out. I'm also just a deal junkie, so I love to just chat through stuff. But yeah, if anyone has any questions, they can reach me there.
Bob, from a fellow deal junkie, you're just such a thoughtful and insightful person. We're so excited to have a young guy who's already enjoyed so much success, but still has so much ahead of him that he's going to go out and do and accomplish. So thank you for sharing all the gems that you shared with us today, and look forward to seeing what you do in the future, my man. Thank you.
Yeah, appreciate the invite again, guys. Yeah, this was great.
Yeah, let's have everyone go chase down their BHAGs that you called it, those big, hairy, audacious goals. I loved it.